Welcome to the best of first-person episodes from Phantoms and Monsters. Please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you'll be notified of all future uploads.
Intense upright canine encounter at Grandma's house in Middletown, Maryland. I am not making an official report because it was so long ago, and I have always brushed this incident off. At the time I was only about 8 to 11 years old, and I can't recall what year exactly, 1960 to 1963, since this was many years ago, and nobody believed me since I was a kid. I was spending the summer at my grandma's house on Shank Road in Middletown, Frederick County, as I had for a couple of years in a row. I welcomed the summers I spent with Grandma, except for the darn outhouse. If I had to go at night, I was a nuisance having to take Grandma with me, which meant waking her up. It was an awful part of being there. One late night I had to get up to use the outhouse, and it was stark black outside. No lampposts or outdoor lighting lined the main lane. Grandma had electricity, but it was only for the house inside, oven, and appliances. She had a TV, a very old floor model, and nobody watched it anyway, since there was not much TV on the Maryland airwaves back in the early 1960s. It had to be like 3 a.m. when I ventured outside. I didn't take a flashlight, and I didn't want to wake Grandma up for finding the flashlight or for her to walk me to the outhouse. The outhouse was located far from the main grouping of structures on the property and the main house, for obvious reasons. It was not a full moon, more like a half moon that night, but enough nighttime illumination in the sky that my eyes adjusted quickly to see the grounds. I could easily navigate my way using Grandma's long and narrow flower garden as a guiding trail. My biggest fear was of black snakes and copperheads because I was warned constantly to look out for them. I made it down to the outhouse and don't even remember hearing the usual night noises like crickets or owls. It seemed almost too quiet. I was a sharp and smart kid with a great imagination, but not enough to make this story up. I felt an uncanny sensation of being watched, and I started to get scared. I left the outhouse, peeked outside first, and for some reason I wanted to run back to the house, getting to safety as quickly as possible. It was a rough and long run, and I tired quickly and began walking the last few hundred feet to the porch of the house. Something told me to look back where I had been. To this day I wished I hadn't. What I saw was an impossible sight. This animal stepping through the backyard of Grandma's property, just past the garden about 10 feet past the outhouse. It was this upright furry creature with a dog-wolf head. I have owned German Shepherds from the age of 7, so the head was almost similar to the ears and snoot of a German Shepherd dog. I stopped dead in my tracks, not believing my eyes because it was impossible. It had arms that had claw-like hands that hung out in front of it. As it turned its head and looked right at me, the eyes looked yellow and super reflective. Chills shot up my spine as it quickly walked on 2 legs that looked like real dog legs bending backwards, traveling from left to right, past her garden, into the old gravel lane, then across into the thicket of the woods where it disappeared. I heard the rustling through the weeds. It may have initially traveled from the usually full cow pasture that was up an incline, past the spring, and up to the cow pasture that was behind Grandma's house. I shudder to think it was hiding behind the outhouse I was in, but that is a distinct possibility as well. Ever since that night, after being teased of the cliché of seeing the big bad wolf at Grandma's house, nobody believed me and thought I made up the story for attention, like the imaginary friend syndrome of kids. From those teasing me, I just put it all behind me, buried this story forever, and never told another human being this tale until now. I just turned 72 years old this year, and I'm sharing this tale with you now. Like I said, it's too late now to submit an official report. I can't even remember which year it occurred, but I will never forget that creature until the day I die.
Giant-headed upright canine encountered in Virginia Beach, Virginia. 10 or so years ago I was driving with my brother in Virginia Beach. It was late at night and we were going to grab some food. We were the only car on this road, a scenic boulevard near the Ocean Naval Air Station, which wasn't abnormal due to the time of night. The right side of the road was wooded with trees, and on the left was a fence that ran parallel to the road. A giant upright wolf-like creature ran full speed in front of the car. It came from the right wooded area and was booking it towards the fence. This thing was at least 12 feet tall minimum. It was hunched over, running insanely fast on its back legs. The legs were bent backwards and extremely muscular. The only way I could describe it was they were bent backwards in a way that demon legs are depicted. The legs were furless except for near the bottom where there were patches of fur. It was wearing a brown hooded cloak that was tattered along the bottom edges. The hood covered its head and midsection, leaving the legs fully exposed. Some sort of elongated snout was emerging from the front of the hood. It was square like a wolf's and had fur. The thing never turned to look at us. It was running towards the fence, jumped and cleared it. I have never seen anything jump so high. I spent the next couple of moments trying to process what I saw. I thought there was some kind of logical explanation, until my brother said, "Did you see that?" and described in detail exactly what I had seen. The only thing that differed was he saw what he described as long claws emerging from the front of the cloak. The cloak and the backwards legs were something I really focused on. The cloak was cloth, and I am certain it wasn't fur or anything else. Seeing this thing terrified me. 10 years later, I am still terrified. Any ideas of what it was? M.
Recent upright canine cryptid sightings and encounters reported in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. I was born and raised in Pottstown and currently still live here. The sighting was an hour west from Philadelphia and half an hour away from Valley Forge. I ran into your Facebook page through Weird Pennsylvania, or something similar to that, which led me to the webpage Phantoms and Monsters. I was reading some things and saw where people who had experienced encounters and sightings could email you with their story. I've had 2 experiences where I've seen things that I cannot explain. I'll start with the most recent. Last year, a friend and I went for a ride to catch up with our friend. It was in March 2020 on a Saturday night, and it just so happened to be the weekend when the quarantine started. We were on Route 422 around midnight, and it was odd cause that highway is usually pretty busy on a Saturday night, but that night we saw maybe 3 cars within a 30-minute ride. So we finishing visiting our friend and started to make our way back home. It was around 2:30 to 3 a.m., and we were going westbound on 422, and again we were pretty much the only car on the road. There's a grass patch that divides the eastbound and westbound highway. We were in the fast lane between the Collegeville and Royersford exit when all of a sudden we passed something to the left of us in the grass. We couldn't see it until we were right up on it and only could catch a glimpse of it for a second. This thing looked like it was on all fours, maybe eating roadkill or something, but unfortunately I could only see it from like the waist hips down. It was much bigger than a deer and had longer, unkempt, straggly orangish reddish fur, kind of like the color of a red fox, but a little lighter in color. What really gets me was the legs on this thing. It had canine-like legs, but they were huge and muscular. It just had that shape that instantly told me this thing was not something you want to FCK with. The legs looked like the drawings I've seen of werewolves or something evil. Something told me that this thing could walk on 2 legs also. After we passed it, I asked my friend who was driving, "Did you see that?" He replied, "Yeah." I asked him, "What was that?" He replied, "I don't know." Neither of us brought it up again during that ride, because I think we were just trying to process what the hell did we just see, and didn't want to sound crazy. When I got home I told my boyfriend about it, and he has no idea what kind of animal that lives around here that it could have been. Next time I saw my friend, who had been driving that night, we both agreed that whatever we saw does not fit the description of any animals in the area, and that it was scary looking. He calls it the beast. A couple months later, another friend was leaving my house and heard something across the street making a low guttural growling noise, which scared him straight to his car and out of there. He was an animal control officer for years and says nothing around here would make that noise. Then about a month after that, my boyfriend was taking out the trash. When he got to the front door, he heard something scratching at the door and sniffing loudly. He said it sounded like a pig grunt sound, but obviously it wasn't a pig. This past October, my friend was sitting in his car in my driveway waiting for me to come outside. I noticed his doors were locked when I went to get in the car. He said he heard something that sounded kind of human, but didn't know what it was, and it scared him. Once I got in his car, I told him everything I just wrote here, and I ended my story to him saying, "A few months ago I saw something on Route 422, and before I could say anything else he said I saw it too." So I asked what color it was, and he described the exact same fur I saw. Then he said when I saw it, it was running on 2 legs across the highway, and once it saw my car it took off really fast, like nothing around here would be able to. My heart was beating so hard listening to him tell me this, because I know he wasn't making it up. I was glad someone else saw this thing. He doesn't know what it was, but said it was about 7 to 8 tall and looked nefarious. He agreed its legs looked evil. He saw it around the same time of year as me, and it was about the same time of night too. I drive this highway all the time and look for it every time, but haven't seen it again. That's about it for that story. I always wonder if any other people saw this thing and what the hell it was. W.
This is Lon Strickler. If you like this program, it would help us if you would give it a thumbs up. Then subscribe and click the bell icon so you get notification when we upload new first-person encounters. We have many more to come very soon. And by the way, if you have a suggestion or an experience of your own, please leave a comment.